Hello and welcome to Trojan Talk. I'm your host, Aaron Taylor. They'll be talking about some research that could help people possibly in tornado recovery in this part of the country and around the country, but our part of the country most definitely. My guest today is the Koch Professor of Economics here at Troy University, Dan Sutter. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you.
And as I mentioned, tornado recovery, a big part of the state of Alabama, especially this year and in past years. Some of the deadliest tornadoes we've seen in a long time came through this state. And you, working through the Johnson Center of Political Economy here at Troy University, have been doing research on tornadoes and recovery and written some books about it. Tell us a little about how you got involved with doing research on tornado recovery.
Well, I started working on tornadoes about a decade ago when I was at the University of Oklahoma. First interested on the specific issue of tornado shelters. I knew there were tornado shelters out there that you could have built into your house, and I was living in Oklahoma. I had always been very afraid of tornadoes growing up, and I thought that I should, maybe study what type of investment a tornado shelter would be. And so as an economist, we have the tools that would allow us to try and quantify such risk trade-offs. And so I started doing that, and from that it just went from one project to another. I was teaching at the University of Oklahoma at the time, and they have a very strong meteorology program. Some of the a lot of the tornado storm chasers that you see on TV are all based out of the University of Oklahoma, and a lot of the leading experts in the world on tornadoes. And once I started talking to them, it turned out that there were a whole bunch of societal or economic impact questions that nobody had really been asking. And so I started.
So you started looking into that sort of stuff. And so, of course, you went from Oklahoma, where known for tornadoes, and then you moved to Alabama, to a place where one of the deadliest tornadoes in U.S. history took place, and about the time that you moved to Alabama. Right. So obviously, I would think that would have become an interest for you as well in looking into something that happened right in your backyard.
Yes, so definitely I had accepted the job here at Troy University before the outbreak last April, and so when that occurred, it certainly naturally sprung to mind that this was something I would probably want to take a look at and study it in more detail. And it's certainly one of the things that shocked us, my co-author on this research and myself, was just how deadly last year's tornadoes were. Obviously, everybody in the media was shocked as well. We'd really come to expect that, come to think that tornadoes couldn't kill that many people anymore. Like maybe in the 1940s or 1930s, that could have happened then, but not now, with all the new technology and radars and warnings and so forth. And so as researchers, the events of last spring really surprised and shocked and saddened us. That if you're a researcher and you've looked at issues regarding casualties, and then mass casualty events happen in your area of expertise, you feel like, well, if I could have been a better researcher or gotten my message out better, maybe somehow we could have helped alleviate that.
Well, let's talk about that, your research. What do you hope that your research can accomplish in looking at all of this? What do you hope that the ultimate goal, if someone actually picks up this and looks at it, will be able to do?
Well, I think the research to date on tornadoes have had a number of really important impacts. One, we looked at the effectiveness of Doppler radar that the Weather Service installed back in the 1990s, and it showed that it reduced tornado fatalities and injuries by about 35 to 40%. And so that's been very important in going forward, because right now the Weather Service is upgrading their radars, doing what's called dual polarization of the radars that actually allow meteorologists to see the storms with much greater detail than they could before. And the Weather Service has pointed to the fact that there were benefits, that there were quantifiable benefits to the nation in terms of reduced casualties from the initial installation of the Doppler radar in justifying the dual polarization upgrades. We've done work that has documented a false alarm effect for tornado warnings, and that's important because if there was no false alarm effect, then the Weather Service would seem to be advised to warn very aggressively for everything. But even we show that too many warnings leads to a cry wolf scenario.
To a little apathy in it.
Yeah. So. Yes, and so we were able to document that, and that was actually an important accomplishment in the hazards research, because nobody had been able to document such an effect before. And one of the other things that our research shows is that it doesn't seem like really long lead times on tornado warnings are all that important. That the benefits all seem to be realized at about a 15-minute warning.
Yes.
Now that's important going forward because the technology is going to exist to possibly go ahead and extend warning times perhaps out to an hour in the next decade. But what our research has shown is actually by making the warnings far more precise geographically, there's a lot more benefit to society, and we're probably going to be able to reduce casualties more by making warnings more precise than trying to extend out the lead time.
Well, we're running out of time here, but obviously I know there's a lot that people can learn. You've got a new book coming out here very soon, and with some more of your research, and hopefully some folks will be able to get a chance to check that out, and maybe this research will help save some more lives. I want to thank you for joining me here today.
Well, thank you for having me on.
And thank you for joining us on this edition of Trojan Talk. That's all the time we have. Now, back to the news desk.